Don't you even think about cooking with those dirty hands. My son Jack snapped, eyeing the grime embedded in my skin from hours spent at the factory. No matter how hard I scrubbed, the stains wouldn't wash off. Feeling ashamed, I started preparing meals wearing oversized plastic gloves. They were so slippery that one day, I accidentally cut my finger. I've always worked hard to provide for my children, but my eldest, Jack, was embarrassed by me. My name is Emily. After divorcing in my 30s, I relied on my hairdressing qualifications to juggle jobs between a barbershop and a factory, raising my 2 boys on my own. I'm 55 now. The divorce was because of my ex-husband's drinking, despite his high education and income. Alcohol turned him violent. I was constantly afraid for our sons, so I made the difficult decision to leave, taking the boys with me. Dirty hands. Huh, you could at least take care of them, Jack said one day, his eyes filled with disdain. He's always been a bit of a germaphobe, obsessed with cleanliness. Brilliant in school, he graduated from a prestigious university, but his words stung. I wash them so much that my skin cracks. I replied, I don't have time to take better care of them. Jack shot me another look of contempt before leaving the room. Mom works hard. My younger son, Sam, chimed in. She deals with machine oil at the factory and cuts hair all day. Unlike Jack, Sam doesn't care much for academics, but he's taught himself programming and works as a freelance engineer from home due to his weak health. We've lived together in our small apartment, scraping by. Jack had wanted to move out as soon as he graduated, but I could barely afford his tuition, let alone help him live independently. You've been working all these years, and this is all you've managed to save? Jack would often say bitterly. Are you secretly spending the money on yourself? Dressed in worn-out clothes. Maybe I just didn't measure up to his expectations. His father, when sober, had a special bond with Jack, and I often wondered if Jack resented me for taking him away. I couldn't be there for him as much as I wanted during his formative years because I was always working. Even after graduation, Jack stayed with us for a while, commuting from home. When he found out I had managed to save some money, he didn't hesitate. Parents who don't know how to make money are such a burden, he said coldly before taking the money and leaving without even telling me where he was going. Jack always admired his father's wealth and education, and when he learned more about it, he criticized me for leaving. He believed that if I had stayed, we would have had a better life, even if his father was a drunk. Despite our strained relationship, seeing Jack leave to start his own life was bittersweet. I cried that night, alone in bed. But Jack kept coming back. Whenever he was short on money, he'd return, taking what little I had saved for my old age. Sam would try to stop him, but Jack's physical strength always won out, leaving us helpless. Then, one day, I received a message from Jack saying he was getting married. He arranged a family meeting and made it clear I shouldn't embarrass him. Dress properly, he said sharply. Despite his harsh words, I felt a glimmer of hope, thinking that maybe having someone special in his life would change him. Perhaps his future wife would teach him the love I couldn't. I waited anxiously for the details of the meeting, but life continued, and I had to work. During a shift at the factory, my phone rang. It was Jack. My heart lifted. Is it time for the meeting? I asked. No, he replied coldly. Her parents are business people. They're different from us. They've got a keen eye for people, so you don't need to come. Before I could respond, he hung up. I was more disappointed than I had expected. Ever since Jack moved out, I constantly worried about him. The thought of him getting married and having someone by his side was comforting. I wanted to meet the woman who loved my son, to ask her to care for him, but Jack's harsh words cut deep. My younger son, Sam, overheard the conversation and shook his head. What the heck? I just bought a new suit for nothing. Man, Jack is so selfish. A few days later, just as I was finishing work and heading home, my phone rang. It was Jack. Her parents are insisting on meeting you, he said bluntly. Come over now, but don't keep them waiting. Panic set in. Should I show up in my work clothes, risking embarrassment, or should I go home to change and risk being late, knowing I'd be delayed if I went home to freshen up? I reluctantly decided to go as I was. On the way, I grabbed some drugstore makeup, did a quick touch-up, dusted off my clothes, and headed to the restaurant. When I arrived, I realized it was a high-end place, the kind that made me feel out of place from the moment I stepped inside. But I had no choice now. Summoning my courage, I approached their table and said, I'm sorry for being late. I'm Jack's mother, Emily. Thank you for this opportunity. Jack's fiancée and her parents stood to greet me, preparing to guide me to my seat. But before I could sit, Jack interjected. My mom has all sorts of allergies. so she can't eat at unfamiliar places. This is just a quick introduction. I stood there, dumbfounded. I didn't have any allergies, but I played along, bowing apologetically before Jack rushed me out of the restaurant. He must have thought my appearance was too disgraceful to allow me to stay. I wanted to speak more with his fiancée, to ask about their future together, but I had no choice. I walked home, feeling hurt and rejected. The next day, Jack called. "Why did you show up looking like that?" he snapped. It was embarrassing. "Don't you understand what a dress code is?" Sam overheard again and grabbed the phone from me. "Mom had a nice dress ready for the meeting, but you told her she didn't need to come. Then you called last minute, asking her to rush over after work. What did you expect her to do?" I took back the phone, my voice calm but strained. "That restaurant, it was beautiful." I realized I was out of place. Were her parents upset? "They asked about where you work, what allergies you have, all sorts of things," Jack replied. "You made me look bad. Now, they're suspicious. I'm trying to get into her family's business." "Mom, I don't know much about it, but it's a good opportunity, and I don't want to be stuck working for other people forever, so don't get in my way." There were so many things I wanted to say to Jack as his mother, words that had been building up for years, but in that moment, all I could do was listen. But I knew he wouldn't listen. To Jack, it seemed like I was nothing more than an obstacle. His final words echoed in my ears: "Low-income factory workers don't need to come to the wedding." His cruelty shocked me, but I swallowed the hurt and replied, "If that's what Jack wants, then so be it." As a parent, nothing brings greater joy than seeing your child find happiness. I wanted to celebrate this new chapter of his life, but if Jack didn't want me there, I had to respect his wishes. When I ended the call, it felt like more than just saying goodbye to a conversation. It felt like the bond between mother and son had been severed, and that realization was crushing. I could barely manage a proper greeting to the woman who would soon be his wife. Her parents seemed kind and refined, everything Jack admired. Knowing that they would become his new family filled me with an overwhelming sense of loneliness. But I forced myself to accept it and went to sleep. Life went on. I continued working at the barbershop and the factory, trying to bury my emotions in the routine of hard work. I still had Sam, and when he gets married, I wanted to be able to help him financially, so I kept my focus on working harder. About 2 weeks before Jack's wedding, he contacted me again. I had thought we were done, especially after he told me not to come to the wedding, but now he was back with more demands. "Weddings are expensive, you know that, right?" he said without preamble. "I know, but I don't have any more money to give you," I responded, trying to keep calm. "Besides, shouldn't you have saved something yourself? You've been working." Jack bristled, clearly irritated by my response. "Are you saying you can't even pay for your own son's wedding? You must have a way. Borrow it from somewhere." He wasn't listening. I sighed, feeling the weight of his demands press down on me. "Fine," I said, giving in. "I'll figure it out. Come by the house to collect it." Jack seemed satisfied and hung up without another word. A few days later, he arrived, took the money with a smug smile, said nothing, and left. As I watched him walk away, the guilt of taking on so much debt for my child weighed heavily on me. It wasn't just the wedding, it was the lingering fear that, if something happened to me, the debt might be passed on to Sam. I knew I had to work even harder to pay it off as quickly as possible. One day, not long after, a man claiming to be a customer arrived at the factory. A coworker called me to the office, and to my surprise, a familiar face was waiting for me. Time passed, and the day of Jack's wedding finally arrived. I had been told not to come, so I went about my usual work routine, praying silently for his happiness. I didn't expect to hear from him, but that afternoon, I was called into the office. Jack was on the phone, and it sounded like he was in the middle of the wedding. Confused, I picked up the phone. "What's going on?" I asked. In a panicked tone, Jack said, "Mom, come to the wedding, now." Startled, I asked, "What happened?" He didn't explain, just urged me to hurry and bring Sam. In a rush, I got ready and headed to the venue. When we arrived, a staff member was waiting and immediately escorted us inside. As the doors opened, I was suddenly under a spotlight, unable to see much through the blinding light. Then, to my surprise, the bride's father announced, "This is Jack's mother, Emily. Please give her a warm welcome." I became the center of attention, feeling both embarrassed and oddly pleased. Bowing to the guests, I took my seat, as directed. From halfway up the stage, I saw Jack, arms crossed and looking away, his new suit crisp yet his demeanor tense. It seemed like he was either embarrassed or irritated by my sudden introduction. Next to him, Sam smiled at me, whispering, "Don't worry about Jack. Let's enjoy this. We're here because the bride's father invited us himself." It all clicked. The man who had visited the factory before the wedding was none other than the bride's father. When Jack had been vague about my absence, the bride's father had taken it upon himself to visit me. Jack couldn't argue with him, and here we were, despite Jack's earlier wishes. Meanwhile, Sam eagerly dug into the feast in front of him, his cheerful spirit lightening the moment. Watching him, I began to relax, appreciating the joy of being at my son's wedding, surrounded by well-wishers in such a grand setting. The reception progressed smoothly, filled with warmth and celebration. By the time it concluded, I had successfully conveyed my blessings to Jack and his bride, feeling a mixture of relief and pride. As we prepared to leave, I decided to express my gratitude to the bride's parents, but as I approached the family waiting room, I overheard something that stopped me in my tracks. "Don't get too comfortable," Jack said coldly. "You're only here because my father-in-law pitted you. This isn't a place for a factory worker who's down on her luck." Before I could respond, a voice behind Jack spoke up. "Jack, are you still talking to your mother like that?" It was the bride's father. Jack froze, clearly caught off guard. "Do you realize the financial burden you've placed on your mother? It wasn't just your tuition, but the cost of moving out, wedding expenses, and all the money you've taken from her for your own convenience," the bride's father said sternly. Jack had no retort. He stood there, staring at the floor, biting his lip. Sam, who had been quiet until then, spoke up. "You had Mom take out a loan for this wedding, didn't you? You know that even $10 million wouldn't have covered all of it, right, Jack?" The bride's father nodded. "I looked into it," he said, handing me a small paper bag from his wife. "This is the money you borrowed for the wedding. We're returning it to you." I was stunned, unsure how to react. The bride's father continued, addressing Jack. "In exchange, you will work at the daycare center and repay the wedding expenses through your salary." Jack looked up, shocked. "Work at the daycare? But I don't have the qualifications to be a childcare worker." "You don't mean managing the center, do you?" His uncertainty was palpable. The bride's father remained calm but firm. "Manage? Absolutely not. The families who trust us with their children are hardworking mothers who sacrifice for their families. Someone like you, who doesn't understand the value of hard work or the struggles of a parent, has no business managing anything." Jack's face paled as the bride's father continued, his tone unwavering. "First, you'll start at the bottom." Jack stared at him, eyes wide with apprehension, as the weight of his new reality began to sink in. "You'll be starting with the basics, cleaning the children's toilets and washing cloth diapers at our daycare," the bride's father said with a laugh. Jack's eyes widened in shock. His face fell as he lowered his gaze, fists clenched tightly. Seeing him in such a state caught me off guard, but then something clicked in my memory. "Wait, could it be? Is your father Mr. Helen?" I asked, a sudden realization dawning on me. The bride's father smiled and clapped his hands together. "You've finally caught on." It hit me. This was the same Mr. Helen, the daycare teacher who had looked after my boys when I had just separated from their father. His wife had worked alongside him at the daycare, both of them helping me through some of the toughest times of my life. "My dear, you've been through so much," Mrs. Helen said, stepping forward to take my hand. "But now, we're on your side." After that, Jack quit his job and moved with his wife to work at the daycare center run by his father-in-law. The bride's parents made it clear, Jack wouldn't be living off handouts anymore, until he had repaid every cent he had taken from me. They would deduct a portion of his monthly salary to pay me back. Jack also needed to earn his childcare certification and gain hands-on experience at the daycare. "There's plenty of time before he's ready to take over my role, Mr. Helen said with a cheerful smile. As I looked at Jack, wearing a strange, humbled smile, I felt a wave of gratitude for his new family. Their support and guidance were exactly what he needed. And as for me, I returned to work with a renewed sense of optimism, feeling hopeful about the future once again.